Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Danya, Tricycle's online learning manager, and I'm very happy to be here with you for this virtual workshop, Compassion in the Face of Impermanence, with Martine Batchelor, Laura Bridgman, and Gavin Milne. Today's Zoom session will be recorded for anyone who's unable to attend live or has to leave early, and we'll make it available on Tricycle's YouTube channel. We'll post that link in the chat in case you'd like to watch it again or share it with friends afterward. We provide these events for free, so if you haven't already and would like to support Tricycle, please consider giving through the donation link in the chat. You'll also find a link in the chat for a $20 discount off our upcoming online course, Embracing Impermanence and Imperfection, Bringing Compassion to Life. Today, we'll leave time for Q&A at the end of this hour-long session. So you can ask a question by typing it into the Q&A panel, which you can find either at the bottom of your screen on a computer or at the top of your screen, I believe, if you're on a mobile device. So we'll get to as many of your questions as we can at the end of this session. Our guests today are Martine Batchelor, Laura Bridgman, and Gavin Milne. Martine Batchelor was a Buddhist nun in Korea for 10 years. She studied Seon Buddhism under the guidance of the late Master Kusan. Martine is a Buddhist teacher and the author of books including Principles of Zen, Meditation for Life, The Path of Compassion, Women in Korean Zen, and most recently, The Spirit of the Buddha. She also teaches 2 of Tricycle's online courses, 3 actually now, including the upcoming one. 2 of those are Knowing How It Feels, Creatively Engaging with Habits, and with Stephen Batchelor, a course on secular Dharma. Laura Bridgman was ordained as a Buddhist nun in 1995. She was resident at Amaravati and Chithurst monasteries under the guidance of her teachers Ajahn Sumedho and Ajahn Sucitto. Laura left the monastic tradition in 2015 and is now staff support teacher at Gaia House, a retreat center in Devon, England. And Laura taught with Gavin Milne, our other guest, Beyond the Inner Critic, another Tricycle course. Gavin Milne has been practicing insight meditation since 2004 and was invited to train as a teacher under the guidance of Janai Postelnik in 2015. Inspired and influenced by other paths, Gavin is particularly interested in exploring practice wherever we find ourselves, whether in the midst of family life or responding to the wider issues of our era. And as I mentioned, he is the co-teacher of Beyond the Inner Critic with Laura Bridgman. So without further ado, I will hand it over to our teachers for today's workshop. Thank you all for being here.
So thank you. And somebody is asking, how do I turn on closed caption? So I presume somebody in the background can take care of that. So a warm welcome. And wherever you are, a really warm welcome. And so today we want to look at impermanence connection to compassion. And it's very much within the framework of what we call Vipassana insight meditation. Because Vipassana means looking deeply. So when we sit in meditation, we're not just trying to be calm, but also we try to be aware of what's going on. And if any of you have meditated, you can notice that you try to be aware of your breath. And the one thing you can notice is actually that things are changing. Things are impermanent. You have thought, they arise, they pass away. You have feeling, they arise, they pass away. You have sensation, they arise and they pass away. You hear sound, they arise and they pass away. And actually, through the insight meditation practice, mindfulness practice, we can really see in a friendly manner that things change. But we know it organically for ourselves. Because the difficulty we have is that we have a tendency to permanentize, to make things in a way last longer than they might sometime. And so something happens is like, oh, it's going to be like that forever. Or you make a mistake and it's, I always make a mistake. So we have a tendency toward that generalization, which can be a little harmful to ourselves, to others. And so through the meditation, by really trying to be aware of how things change in two ways. One, they change moment to moment, like sound arise and pass away. Or sometimes sensations, you might have a sensation and you notice how the sensation continues, but it changes actually within itself. And through that practice of being aware of change, then we actually realize there are two aspects to change. One aspect is what we would call ultimate change, and this is death. And often we live as if, some people, death is very present, but other people is like, oh, we're quite comfortable. So kind of death come much later. And because of that, we kind of have a little the feeling things kind of are taken a little for granted. And to me, this is what I realize, that we can take impermanence more like in a fatalism. Oh, the vase is broken. Who cares? It's impermanent, especially if it's not mine. But actually, personally, I really understood impermanence when I saw my father die. And I saw his last breath. And in that moment, I really experienced life rests upon a single breath for everything that lives. And suddenly compassion arose. Compassion arose for a life that is so fragile. And then it totally changed basically my relationship to others. Because suddenly, instead of seeing people for the history I had with them, the idea I had of them, which were generally in the past, I met them where they were here and now. And it totally changed my relationship with my mother. Instead of meeting her with our history, I met her, where is she now? What is this human being needing now? And then totally kind of having that compassion for that human being in that moment. But also, for me, impermanence is also, in a way, giving us what I would call the gift of change. So basically, it's saying there is a potential for change. Because to me, the most uncompassionate things we can do is say about ourselves, I am always like this, I will never change, or to somebody else, you're always like this, you will never change. Because it's kind of like saying, you're going to do this 24 hours a day, every week, every month, every year, forever after. But not. We cannot. And so what we have to see is that, yes, there can be a little repetition. We might have a tendency to do something. A few years back, I had the habit of losing my bag. And then Stephen would say, oh no, you're always losing your bag, with all my stuff in it and keys and things like that, And so it was kind of like, I am this person who always forget her bag forever after. And I was like, woo. And then I realized I did not lose it all the time. I kind of had a tendency to lose it when I traveled, when I was tired, and if it was black, because then it kind of melted with the decor. So after that, I have kind of like bags with colors so that at least I can notice them. And when I'm tired, I kind of try to put my bag across my shoulders so I don't lose them. So I am not stuck. And to me, this is like a really compassionate move, is to see somebody can change. They might not change now. The change might be slow, but they can change. And this is what kind of was a lovely story with my nephew. Oh, long ago, I taught him the breath meditation because he had difficulty. He did not really get it. He was 22, he kind of did not really get it. And then 20 years later, we were at a family dinner. He said, oh, you know, the breath meditation, when I had difficulty at work, I used it and it was so helpful. So it was like I planted a seed. I saw my teaching him the meditation with the breath as planting a seed. And then at some point it could grow and the person could kind of, in a way, use it. My nephew could use it. So this is what I wanted to talk about today. And now I am passing to Laura, really trying to be aware of change, ultimate change, the gift of change, and having compassion through that.
Thank you, Martine. Just aware, as you were finishing your talk, these movements of changing conditions are happening all the time. It's a change from Martine presenting to you to me presenting to you, and a new connection in this moment. And another way of seeing something very central in practice is how we are in connection with ourselves in this moment. So just coming to the body, the feelings, thoughts, the mental state. And it's in the connection to experience in this moment that we can contemplate our relationship to the sense of imperfection, which is the translation we're using for dukkha, and our relationship to impermanence or change. So another way of, in a way, getting insight into that relationship is to sense how things seem permanent. So one example is how we experience meeting someone for the first time. So many of you, for instance, will be, I'll be new. Many of you won't have met me. I can't see you. I can somehow imagine you or sense you out there, but you see me. And on one level, this person, Laura, is, if we look really closely at ourselves or anything, everything is changing. If we look closely, we can see that everything is changing moment to moment. Yet what happens when we meet someone for the first time? There are almost like flashing microsecond perceptions arising based on past impressions. So perceptions around color of my skin, my age, how I articulate, my accent, and sort of below the threshold of consciousness, that will be forming a certain impression based on past associations. So that sense of permanence has this subtle quality. Rather than meeting completely afresh in the new, completely fresh and new in the moment, there's a sense of something familiar and already known. And that's a subtle way conditions that are constantly changing and new seem like they have a continuity. And then those impressions that we make about a person when we meet them for the first time accumulate into ideas and thoughts and emotional tones about them that in turn form into a view of them, who they are as a person, and in particular, who they are or what they mean to us, who we are in relationship to them. And so this all happens often unconsciously and is often driven also by almost an instinctual level. The protective movement in our mind to predict conditions rather than take what comes down the line and feel we have the robustness and capacity to take what comes down the line. But as we notice these ways we relate to the changing conditions through previous ideas, previous conditioning from society, from our personal upbringing, that seeing of it, that awareness of it, puts us in touch with something that's just not of that movement in our mind, that's overlaying the past onto the present moment. And we can almost see more, we get to see more and more, there's that thought, there's that idea of that person. And as I'm with that, I'm also here and available to connect to them right now. It's almost like we can feel both happening simultaneously. And this can be pretty interesting as well with someone, not just someone we meet for the first time, but also someone we know. We know well, we think we know them. You can almost play with the idea of, what is it I already know about this person? And what's it like, as it were, to put that knowledge to the side and receive them in the moment. So in this way, we start to loosen our relationship to permanence, or soften it. And we come closer into touch with allowing change, in an experiential, in the moment, live way. And instead of then change being a cause of suffering, it has this possibility of being bringing a freshness, a vividness, and an openness. Okay, so I think I'm going to pause there and invite Gavin in, who's going to lead us in a guided meditation.
So thank you, Laura. Thank you, Martine, also. Very good to be with you all today, and very nice to see you, but I realise it's not realistic to have everyone on the screen. So I'm just imagining you at this point. And so I'd like to offer some guided meditation. We've actually covered quite a lot of ground there. And really the essence of this teaching is to put it into practice. So we have an opportunity now for about 15 minutes or so, and I'll offer some guidance, and then we'll have a few minutes of silence in that meditation as well. And we're going to explore or dip our toe into Vipassana practice. And the title of this session is nice because in a way it really encapsulates the attitude that we can tune into as we approach meditation practice. Compassion in the face of impermanence. Because as we've already started to touch on, our experience is changing all the time. And the curious thing about being human is that we have this tendency to act and live as if it's fixed. So meditation, in a sense, is the practice of really bringing the reality into our experience, kind of knowing how things are on a cellular level. So if you'd like to find a posture that feels comfortable with some uprightness, and as you do this, just tuning into this attitude of compassion. So we don't have to feel a particular way, but it's this sense of being with our experience as it is. And just in your own time, allowing your eyes to gently close. So there's this sense of allowing things to be as they are in this practice, allowing them to reveal their nature to us. And this quality of awareness, which also comes and goes, like so much of our experience. Just noticing when it's there. So just awareness of experience in this moment. If you've done some meditation practice before, we'll know this experience of awareness being there for a time and then drifting away. And we invite it to gently come back. And we use this experience of the body as a place that awareness can land with. So we can keep it nice and simple and just pick up the sensations of this body sitting just as it is. It can be useful just to make space for whatever emotions are passing through. Remind ourselves that it's not about stopping thinking. It's not about having to be calm. In a sense, it's about compassionately letting go. As we're pointing to, something happens as we start to see the impermanent nature of our life. Maybe sense the freedom in this, the possibility of freedom, of not needing to be fixed. This awareness somehow starts to infuse our being so that we start to know this experience of impermanence deeply, more deeply than just thinking about it. So allowing this awareness to connect with the sensations of this body sitting. And just being curious about the nature of these sensations. Maybe get a sense of temperature changing. Sensations coming and going. Sensing in and seeing what you discover. Your experience is your teacher. And we're already practicing compassion. This willingness to be with that which is sometimes difficult to be with. So we'll have all had different experiences today, but there's often something in the system that's a bit challenging. This practice allows things to move, allows things to soften, allows things to take the space they need. So just being curious, just seeing if maybe in small moments you can have the experience of awareness, just knowing sensation, the body sitting, being curious about the changing nature of this experience. And any time we find ourselves lost in thoughts or thinking, this is all part of the changing landscape also. So just simply beginning again, whenever we become aware again. Sense of kindness, sense of compassion. Might be if you feel like your mind is steadying a little bit. You can be just a little bit curious, other experiences in your body. Maybe you start to notice the breathing. Maybe it's just recognize that this body really is changing all the time. Things going into it, things passing out of it. This exchange of air with the world around. Thoughts happening. Different feelings in the body. What's it like to meet this with an attitude of compassion? And if you find the mind wandering all the time, feels a bit turbulent on the inside, mixed emotions arising, in a sense the practice is already happening just by the willingness to be with. We start to disentangle in our own time. maybe things need to be a little bouncy for a while. So continuing to explore with this transformative quality of loving awareness. What is the nature of this experience in this moment? Flowing, moving, changing, practicing together. So thank you, everyone. We're all practicing together. This feels especially powerful when you've got this sense of so many people doing it in different places at the same time in different parts of the world, and you know what's coming forth when we do this together. So I just wanted to say a couple of other things about this terrain of impermanence. I was sort of trying to tune into what was going on in my life when I first came to this teaching, this practice. And I think it was something along the lines of actually feeling quite overwhelmed. And I think if somebody at that point had said to me, well, you know, everything around you is impermanent and changing, that might have felt more overwhelming. And I'm not sure the response necessarily would have been one of compassion. So we have this curious relationship with impermanence. And hopefully what we shared this evening gives you this sense that by starting to really know it and open to it in our experience, we can actually connect with this quality of compassion in a natural way, which then goes on to support freedom and well-being. It's compassion in itself is a freeing quality of heart. Overwhelm, in a sense, is something a little bit different. And it just feels really important to kind of make this connection, I think, in the current sort of circumstances and situations that it seems like we're in collectively at the moment. There's so much challenge and even crisis in the world. And it is the case that impermanence can be a doorway to that which can free us from that experience of disconnection, of isolation, when we feel fixed or think that we're fixed. So we hope that some of what we've shared with you today in this session can really serve our own well-being and also collective well-being. This is really what this teaching is all about. So we have some time for questions now, and I'll pass over to Danya to lead with the Q&A.
Actually, I saw the Q&A. I see where it is. And so I will take care of the first question. And so the question is for Martine. For those of us that believe that there are other dimensions of experience, as well as an afterlife, like the astral and causal, how can we prepare for that, besides developing loving kindness and compassion and letting go of self-focusing? So there is a sutta, which I love very, very, very much. It's called the Kalamazoota. And so there are villages, and the Buddha is passing by, and they ask the Buddha, what should we do? You know, one person comes by, a teacher, he says, you should do this. Another one says opposite. Another one says something also different. But what should we do? And then he kind of basically, the beginning of the Kalamazoota is about, you know, you should not just believe because it's in the book or because the teacher said it, etc., etc. And then the criteria that the Buddha suggests is whatever you are going to do, does it lead to well-being? Does it lead to harmlessness? Does it lead to compassion? And to living communally harmoniously. So in a way, you would say the sutta is in four, it's kind of like a little sonata in four movements. First movement, don't rely on this, that, and another. Second movement, the criteria is such. And then he has an interesting kind of little third movement, where we say, well, if there is life after death, then actually by really cultivating well-being, harmlessness, compassion, loving kindness, living harmoniously, then you're sure that you will have a good rebirth. If the fruit of your karma have action in the future life, again, if you cultivate well-being, respect, ethics, etc., then you will have a good result from those fruit of karma. However, and that's the part I really like about that sutta, he says, if there is no rebirth, if there is no fruit of karma in a future life, then in this life, because you act lovingly, compassionately, harmlessly, then anyway, you will have a good life. So this would be my little comment on this question. And I hope it kind of, to some degree, will answer it.
Thank you, Martine, for starting us off with the questions. We have another question from Robert asking, how do we work with chronic conditions that will be with us for the rest of our lives? They will end at our death, which makes them impermanent, but otherwise they are pervasive and seemingly always present. I wonder if, Laura, you would take that one?
Well, first of all, Robert, I think those are very challenging and tough conditions to be with, so I empathize with that. So I think in this short time, I could just speak to one thing I found helpful in my own practice is when I'm with circumstances beyond my control, circumstances that are difficult, painful, and challenging, you kind of meet this edge where you can't make the conditions the way you would wish them to be, and even compassionately wish them to be. And so what the practices support us with is how we're with the pain. So just bringing a gentle curiosity when we have the capacity to do that. So maybe, I don't know if there's times when the pain varies a bit, or your sense of your strength to be with it has a little more ground to it. But just gently exploring the relationship to the pain. So one way I do this is just centering, coming into touch with myself and asking myself the question in the moment: how do I feel towards this pain in this moment? So in this moment, what's my attitude towards this pain? So rather than it being about making space for the pain, it's connecting to the mind state and attitude, or the feeling state and attitude that arises in relationship to the pain. So it's really natural and normal to want the pain to go away. So instead of maybe glossing that natural response with, I'll practice loving kindness towards this pain, or I'll open towards this pain, rather instead meeting in the moment what's actually here, which is maybe quite often when we're with the pain, it's a contraction. And the attitude is, I want it to stop. And there's something paradoxical I find happens in my practice when I allow the attitude that's here and the feeling that's here. That the openness to that is a kind of loving kindness practice. It's like letting it be here, that feeling, that mind state. So there's a meeting of that, and in that meeting and allowing, opening, so that the way we're naturally contracting against the pain, or the way we may be habitually with the pain, which is very understandable, that has the potential to change shape, if you like. And just saying that without any should in it, it's really seeing what the truth of what arises in the moment when we bring a connection and a gentle inquiry to the way it is. How am I in this moment with this pain as it's coming up? And one more useful question is, what would support me in this moment to be with my experience on this side of the equation, be with this aversion to the pain, or if it's there, or whatever the feeling is. Okay, I think that's all I'll say. Thank you. Hope that's helpful, Robert.
Thank you, Laura. I have a question from David. Based on these teachings, values themselves are also impermanent, correct? So how does one live the good life in accordance with compassionate values if they themselves are impermanent? How can one rely on any value if it's impermanent? Perhaps Gavin, you'd like to respond to that?
Thank you, David. I'll give it a go. That's an important and deep question. I think my initial response is that, yeah, when we're talking about impermanence, there's a tendency also, you know, potentially with the kind of lives and upbringings most of us have had, to think about the sort of something going and disappearing. But we can also relate to impermanence as a kind of as a fluidity, as a kind of a change. And there are certain things that, because of that, we can really strengthen, we can develop, we can cultivate, which is such a central part of the path of practice. In fact, in a way, it's the whole path of practice, is to cultivate liberating qualities of heart and mind. And the reason we can do that is because they're impermanent. And I think the language of values fits into that also. You know, we're trying to ask deep questions of ourselves when we come to this practice. What is it we really want to bring forth in this life? What is it we value most deeply? When we're you know, at latter stages in our life, what do we look back on? What do we want to have brought forth? So impermanence is saying to us, you can do that. You're not fixed. You're not who the bully in the playground taught you were and told you were, and that you've been carrying for all these years. You are so much more than that. So it is important to connect with what our deepest values are. Impermanency allows us to cultivate, to grow the garden of the heart and mind. Every garden is impermanent. And you could say that liberation is like the flowering of certainly the most profound flower I've ever been able to think of. So yeah, I think it's true. Values are fluid. There might be some core values that are pretty reliably there, and you know, so within this context of what we're noticing to be impermanent, there is something quite timeless also about the Buddha's teaching. You know, it was said that he rediscovered this path 2,500 years ago, and that it was taught eons and eons before. So yeah, I don't want to land anywhere too fixed with this, actually. I think that if a value to be free in the world, if that is a value, then maybe that's more robust and steady. All teachings are a kind of means to something, and we're working with worldly conditions primarily through the lens of impermanence, and then, you know, nirvana itself is said to be permanent. So there's something permanent in amongst all of this. I hope that gives you some avenues for exploration there, and certainly really rich to bring into your practice. And aspiration and values, these are questions we need to ask in our life and align ourselves with. Impermanence gives us the possibility to do that, to not be fixed or live a life as though we're fixed.
Thank you, Gavin. A question from Carol. Perhaps Martine, you can take this one. As an older person with some health problems, the ultimate impermanence death represents is not theoretical. At times, this awareness can be frightening and even overwhelming. How can I best deal with this when it arises? Sorry, you're on mute. So.
I have to unmute myself. I was listening to Gavin. So yes, it's true. As we get older, I am also getting older. I am 70 years old. And then what is weird, you see other people dying more and more that we knew before and were in the news. And with the COVID, kind of quite a lot of people are dying. And so we kind of, oh, wait a minute. Not only we are getting older, but it's kind of like, it's kind of really there. And then we kind of, you know, we have a weakness, more weakness than we had before. And so you see, this is in a way the mystery of ultimate change death, is that death is certain, but the time of death is uncertain. And there is a practice around that, kind of reflecting on the certainty, reflecting on the uncertainty. And then if death is certain, but the time of death is uncertain, what is the most important things to do now? And personally, what I would say in such a time is, if you can ask such question, you are not dead yet. So if you're not dead yet, what is the most I can do with that? And at the same time, I very likely to look that fright, that fear might be there more if you have difficulty, if you have unpleasantness. And very likely if you have some time which are more easeful and you feel better, then actually you don't think about it. And so that's something I kind of explore a lot, is what we call Vedana, tonality. How if there is unpleasant tonality due to something else, it will be associated. And so there can be quickly that association with death, with fear, and it's kind of like, kind of the organism as a way of reacting to, I nearly, or I could. And so to really notice when it comes, and here, in a way, it's kind of, what is it that's going to help me to feel that shock to the system, what fear happens, innovating a little the system, and how can I experience it, and also find some kind of calmness within it. But also notice when it's not there, when actually the fear is not there, and you're really present to what there is. Because in the way, the fear is really in the future. And in the future, we can really frighten ourselves because it's abstract. And we can only deal with difficulty in the present and our creative potential really responding to the present. So I think I would be a little careful. Is it a fear because of something now? Is it something I know unpleasant because of unpleasantness? Or am I frightening myself by kind of going too much in the future when in a way I am not there yet? And so in a way, right now, what is the best thing I can do for myself? It's what I call creative, wise, compassionate engagement. How can I deal with what is going right now? And nearly what is the least thing I could do to help myself? So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you very much, Martine. Question from Sam. It is sometimes said that awareness is compassionate simply by virtue of its nature. Could you speak to this point directly? Perhaps Laura, you take that.
Thank you. So when we connect in the moment to our direct experience, there's a way maybe in our mind we're recognizing it. So there's this pain in the body, for instance, or the feeling tone that's here. We're recognizing it. And there's a way we're also, if we're open and relaxed, it's as if we're also allowing ourselves to experience it more, a little more in our hearts. So like there's a way our mind knows what we're experiencing in the moment. And there's a way our heart resonates with it. So I like to use this phrase or this invitation, how do I come alongside this feeling? So maybe a mind state or a feeling in the body. And then maybe this natural reaction of it, if it's not unpleasant, to actually move away from it. And then with inquiry and mindfulness, there can be a sort of checking of that movement away, or that movement to get past the unpleasant. Notice that urge. So we can feel that's awareness that can notice the urge. And because it's possible to notice it, there's a moment of choice whether to go in that direction of, I want to get away from this. And we can sense, oh, actually, no, I don't have to move away. I can let this be here. I have enough ground, enough space, enough centeredness. It's possible to tolerate it. It's possible even to let it in experientially a little more. So there's a way when we let something be the way it is, a feeling or how something affects us, be what it is. There is a quality of compassion. So we can sometimes think of compassion as a quality that tries to make things better. But there's another level of compassion that allows us to feel what we're experiencing more deeply and more fully. And in that allowing and opening and meeting, another experience of resolution can happen. So it's as if we can allow what's affecting us to pass through. It's a bit like we learn how to, it's a metaphor, be on the station as the things that come and go, like the trains passing through the station, and we don't have to get on the train. We can feel the movement, feel the effect, and feel this capacity to stay home with our awareness. Okay.
And we're sorry because we have to stop here. And there is such a good question. And so if you join us for the course, we will be able to answer lots of your questions. But please, it was lovely questions. Sorry, we could not answer them all. And they really, really thank you for your practice and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Martine, Laura, and Gavin, for being with us today. And thank you to everyone who joined us in this workshop. It feels really rich and so much more to explore. So yes, as Martine mentioned, beginning next week, Martine, Laura, and Gavin are leading an online course exploring these topics further, called Embracing Impermanence and Imperfection, Bringing Compassion to Life. There's a link in the chat you can use to learn more about that course and receive $20 off if you'd like to enroll. We do provide these sessions for free, so if you'd like to help support this and the Trischool's other efforts, please consider donating at trischool.org/donate. And please do come again. We've really enjoyed having everyone here. Thank you all.
Please keep well, keep well.
Bye, everyone.